You know that feeling, right? Strapped in, the engines whine up, and that push back into your seat as you leave the ground. There's always that moment, isn't there?
Yeah, a little bit of hope, maybe.
Exactly. A quiet hope, a wish for a smooth flight, everything working just right.
But sometimes
Yeah.
it doesn't.
And that reality hit incredibly hard. For a flight leaving Ahmedabad, June 12th, 2025, near Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport.
That hope just wasn't enough that day.
The plane went down, and what came out of that? Well, it's a really stark truth about aviation safety. We dove into the material you shared, and it's clear.
Relying on hope or prayers,
Yeah.
it's just not a safety strategy.
No, and this crash, it wasn't just, one awful event in isolation. It really ripped open some deep cracks in the system.
Cracks people have been pointing out for years.
So let's set the scene. What exactly happened?
It was an Air India flight, a Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner, big plane.
Yeah.
230 passengers, 12 crew members on board, and it happened incredibly fast.
How fast?
Less than a minute after takeoff. Just moments after leaving the runway, it crashed.
And not in an empty field. The sources say it came down in a residential area near Meghananagar.
That's right, which meant the tragedy just spread outwards. It wasn't contained.
People on the ground were affected.
Lives lost on the ground, too. We saw reports mentioning medical students, a doctor's wife. The devastation was immense, far beyond the aircraft itself.
The final toll, 241 lives. And when you see names mentioned, like former Gujarat Chief Minister Vijay Rupani, those medical students, that doctor's wife, it stops being a number.
Absolutely. Each one a story, a future, just gone.
And amidst all that horror, incredibly, there was a survivor.
One sole survivor, Ralesh Vishwaskumar, a British national, Indian origin, pulled from the rest.
His description, it's just brutal.
Harrowing. He said, "There were dead bodies around me. I got scared. I got up and ran."
Just imagine. And the pain for his family doesn't end there. His brother, Ajay.
Still missing. That uncertainty on top of everything else. It's unthinkable.
So, in the immediate aftermath, what was the official line? From the DGCA, the regulator.
Well, the Director General of Civil Aviation, the DGCA, they came out very, very quickly.
What did they say?
They pointed to a dual engine failure.
A rare one. Caused by.
Attributed to a bird strike. Now, aviation experts like Gaurav Taneja noted this.
Yeah.
That specific scenario, a bird strike taking out both engines on a modern jet like a 787, is exceedingly rare. Extremely rare.
Okay, so the rarity is one thing, but what about how the DGCA handled it? That initial response?
That's where things get problematic.
Yeah.
The analysis highlights the speed, yes, but also how it felt. Rushed, maybe even sloppy.
Sloppy.
Releasing the names of the pilots, Captain Sumit Sabharwal and First Officer Clive Kundar.
When did it do that?
Within hours of the crash. Hours.
That feels wrong, doesn't it? Before any real investigation could even start.
It wasn't just a feeling, it was a direct violation of established international procedure.
Okay, what procedure?
It goes right against ICAO's Annex 13.
Right. ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization. Talk us through Annex 13. Why is violating that specific rule such a big deal?
Okay, so ICAO sets the global standards, right, for aviation safety. Annex 13 is their rule book, specifically for investigating accidents and incidents.
Got it.
And its core principle is incredibly clear. There is one primary goal for an investigation.
Which is?
To find the cause or causes so you can implement preventative measures to make sure it doesn't happen again. That's it.
So it's about learning lessons, fixing systems.
Exactly. It is explicitly not about assigning blame, especially not rushing to blame individuals before you understand the whole picture.
So releasing pilot names within hours.
It looks less like a search for truth.
And more like trying to shape the story. Maybe point blame quickly, perhaps away from bigger systemic problems.
That's the strong concern raised in the material, yes.
Yes.
It gives off that impression, identifying a cause, assigning blame, before the really complex work of understanding all the factors has even properly begun.
And when you break that fundamental rule of Annex 13,
you basically undermine the whole point of the investigation, which is preventing the next crash.
And reading through this, it becomes clear this isn't some new issue cropping up in 2025. These concerns about the system in India, they go back.
Way back. Decades, actually. The sources show ICAO flagged India as far back as 2006.
2006? Wow.
Yeah, nearly 20 years before this crash. And the issue, a lack of an independent aviation regulator.
So the very same core issue, regulatory independence being discussed around this crash, was flagged almost 2 decades earlier.
Precisely. It's a long-standing structural concern.
So ICAO sets these standards. Annex 13 gives clear rules for investigating, finding causes, taking action. But is India's system actually doing that effectively? Preventing repeats?
Well, the evidence we looked at suggests, not consistently. Take the issue of tail strikes.
Explain that quickly.
It's when the tail of the plane scrapes the runway, usually during takeoff or landing. It shouldn't happen often. But we saw mentions of recurring tail strike incidents over the last 3 years prior to the crash. If investigations were truly effective, leading to robust, lasting fixes.
You wouldn't expect to see the same kind of mistake happening over and over.
Exactly. It suggests the system isn't fully learning or the lessons aren't sticking.
Which brings us right back to that fundamental point the analysis hammers home. The relationship between the Ministry of Civil Aviation and the DGCA.
Yes. This seems to be at the heart of it. The material argues pretty forcefully that having the ministry a political administrative body directly overseeing the technical safety regulator, the DGCA.
It's like asking, what was the analogy, a chef to do brain surgery?
Something like that. Their core functions, their expertise, their priorities. They're just fundamentally different.
And the result is the DGCA, which really should be this fierce, independent watchdog laser-focused on safety.
Ends up acting more like, well, the term used was a lapdog, answering to the ministry, not purely driven by safety imperatives.
And what are the consequences of that lack of real autonomy?
It means safety decisions can get tangled up. Bureaucracy, political agendas, maybe even commercial pressures from airlines or industry players.
So safety isn't always the #1 non-negotiable priority.
That's the risk. The analysis puts it bluntly. In that kind of setup, profits can trump safety. And a crash like Ahmedabad is perhaps the most devastating potential outcome of that imbalance.
It's not just the structure, though, is it? It's also about the people in the DGCA.
Absolutely critical point.
Uh-huh.
The source material stresses this. The DGCA needs to be filled with qualified aviation professionals.
Meaning?
People who live and breathe aviation, experienced engineers, seasoned pilots, safety specialists who understand the nuts and bolts, the operational realities.
Not just generalist administrators or bureaucrats shifted from other departments.
Right. You wouldn't want your doctor to just be a general manager who read a medical textbook, right?
Yeah.
You want someone with deep, specific training and experience.
Mm.
The same applies here. Aviation safety is complex, high stakes. You need that deep expertise running the regulatory body.
And looking at the bigger picture, there seems to be this recurring pattern after tragedies like this.
Yeah, it was described almost like a cycle, a bad remake of Groundhog Day.
Oh, so?
You have the crash. Then comes the shock, the public outrage. Understandable.
Then the promises of reform, inquiries launched, intense media focus.
Right. But then, gradually, the attention moves on. Things settle back down. And feels like we return to a kind of status quo.
Until the next time.
Until the next tragedy potentially happens.
So that initial rush by the DGCA, naming the crew, blaming the bird strike almost immediately, could that be seen as part of that pattern?
It could be interpreted that way, yes.
Yeah.
A quick explanation, maybe trying to satisfy that immediate need for answers, possibly deflecting from those deeper systemic issues that take longer to fix.
Now, about the bird strike itself, are bird strikes a genuine problem?
Oh, absolutely. They are a real and significant hazard in aviation worldwide, and particularly in places like India, with large bird populations, sometimes issues with waste management near airports attracting birds. It's a known risk.
Okay, acknowledged. But the point raised in the analysis is about preparedness.
Exactly. If bird strikes are a known significant risk, why does there seem to be a lack of widespread, effective bird control technology at airports?
We're not talking about sci-fi stuff here.
Not at all. Other major airports globally use things like specialized radar to track flocks, deterrents like lasers, even trained falcons. It's established technology.
So why isn't that standard? Why aren't we better prepared for this known risk?
And even beyond the prevention, let's accept for a moment that a bird strike happened. The fact that it could allegedly lead to something as catastrophic as a dual-engine failure.
Even if statistically rare.
Right. Rarity doesn't mean impossible. It points to a potential lack of robustness in the system to handle these infrequent but, incredibly high-impact events.
Yeah.
Why wasn't the system better prepared for even that rare possibility?
In all these points, the regulatory structure, the staffing, the technology gaps, the response patterns, they all circle back to one thing.
The human cost.
It's easy to get lost in the technical details, the acronyms.
But every single failure in that chain translates into human tragedy. It's the 241 people who died on that plane and on the ground in Meghaninagar.
It's the families. Vijay Rupani's family, the families of those medical students, the doctor's wife, grappling with this sudden, immense loss.
It's Ramesh Vishwaskumar, the survivor, carrying that trauma, and his family, still waiting for news about his brother Ajay, that ongoing agony.
And the sources also mention injured medical students on the ground, others potentially unaccounted for.
These aren't abstract statistics. They are individual lives, hopes, futures shattered, changed forever, because the system they trusted ultimately failed them.
And in the immediate aftermath of such a failure, while the long-term focus has to be prevention, there's another system that kicks in: insurance. The financial reality.
Right. The material breaks it down. Aviation insurance generally covers three main things.
Broadly, yes. Damage to the aircraft itself, what they call hull insurance, then liability for the passengers' injuries, sadly, fatalities, and third-party liability damage or injury caused on the ground.
Like in the residential area in this case.
Exactly. And experts cited, like Saurav Biswas, suggest an event like this. It's almost certainly a total loss for the aircraft.
Meaning the plane is basically considered destroyed, irreparable from an economic standpoint?
Correct. It's written off.
And getting compensation payouts?
Yeah.
That's not instant, is it?
Far from it. The material points out these settlements are complex. They can take a long time, often 2 to 3 years.
Wow. 2 or 3 years of waiting for families already going through the worst. It's a grueling process. Companies involved, like New India Assurance, Tata AIG, they handle these massive claims. But the ripple effect across the industry is predictable.
What's that?
Higher insurance premiums for airlines. Stricter terms on policies?
Which inevitably means...
Those costs get passed on. It could mean higher ticket prices for all of us flying.
But here's the crucial point about insurance, right?
Absolutely essential point. Insurance is a financial tool. It deals with the financial consequences after something has gone terribly wrong.
It doesn't stop the bad thing from happening in the first place.
Not at all. It's a safety net, financially speaking.
Right.
It is not a substitute for prevention. It pays for the failure. It doesn't prevent it.
So, looking beyond India for a moment helps put this in context. The analysis does that, right? Compares the situation.
Yeah, and it's important. India isn't unique in facing aviation safety challenges. Every country does. But the point is, others demonstrate that a higher standard, a more robust system, is achievable.
Like where?
Well, the U.S. is often cited, with its Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, which has a long history in a structure that's largely independent.
Okay.
Or you look at specific measures, like Singapore's Changi Airport, known for its really advanced proactive bird control systems. It shows a different level of investment and priority placed on mitigating known risks.
So the takeaway isn't that India's problems are unique, but that the approach needs to change.
Precisely. It comes down to priorities. The analysis makes this point really strongly. You can't have sustainable growth in aviation without a rock-solid safety foundation.
It's like building a skyscraper.
On shaky ground. Looks impressive for a while, maybe. But eventually, it's fundamentally unstable. Safety isn't a nice-to-have or a drag on growth. It is the foundation.
Okay, so if that's the diagnosis, what's the prescription? How do we build that stronger foundation? The material outlines some concrete steps, a sort of plan.
Yes, a pretty clear, no-nonsense plan for safer skies emerged from the analysis.
Let's break it down. Number 1.
Independence. Make the DGCA truly functionally independent from the Ministry of Civil Aviation's direct oversight on technical safety matters. Full stop.
Number 2.
Staffing. Get qualified experts in charge, prioritize hiring and promoting experienced engineers, pilots, air traffic controllers, safety specialists, people with deep, real-world aviation knowledge.
Not just general administrators.
Right. Build a culture driven by expertise.
Third.
Adherence to global standards. Strictly follow ICAO recommendations, especially Annex 13 for investigations. That means proper timelines, confidentiality during the process, transparency in findings, and an unwavering focus on prevention, not blame.
4th point.
Technology at airports. Invest seriously in upgrading safety tech. That includes proven bird control measures, radar, lasers, whatever works best locally. Don't treat it as optional.
Makes sense. 5th.
Transparency. Investigations need to be conducted openly, findings shared publicly, promptly, without being filtered to protect reputations. Build public trust through openness.
And the final piece of that plan.
Accountability.
Yeah.
Real consequences for safety violations.
Yeah.
Not just paperwork exercises or slaps on the wrist. If rules are broken, if negligence occurs, there must be meaningful accountability to deter future lapses.
Beyond the regulator and the ministry, other players have a role too, right? The courts, the media.
Absolutely. The judiciary, for instance.
Mm.
A tragedy like Ahmedabad could, and perhaps should, prompt the courts to scrutinize regulatory performance and demand adherence to standards if the regulator is seen as failing.
They can step in and demand accountability?
Potentially, yes. And the media.
Mm-hmm.
Their role is crucial, but it needs to be sustained.
Meaning?
Go beyond the initial, understandable focus on the human tragedy. Keep digging into safety records, keep questioning the regulators, keep demanding answers about systemic issues and the implementation of reforms. Focus on substance, not just sensation, and maintain that pressure.
So this awful event, this tragedy, it really represents a critical moment, doesn't it? A crossroads for India's aviation sector.
It really does. The sector is growing incredibly fast,
Yeah.
which is great in many ways. But this crash forces a stark choice.
What's the choice?
Either continue down the path of reactive fixes, promises made in the heat of the moment that fade away, basically more of the same cycle,
Mm-hmm.
or make a fundamental, deep-rooted commitment to a safety-first culture, a complete overhaul.
And that takes more than just words.
It takes serious money investment in people, technology, infrastructure. It takes real political will from the very top. And maybe hardest of all, it takes a cultural shift. Moving away from any sense of complacency towards constant vigilance and proactive safety management.
The analysis had a powerful point here, comparing capabilities.
Yeah, it basically said, if India has the brilliant minds, the resources, the capability to achieve incredibly complex things, like sending missions to the moon,
Which it does.
then there is absolutely no reason it cannot build and maintain an aviation safety system that is truly world-class, one that people can genuinely trust.
It makes the idea of just hoping for the best seem insufficient. Unacceptable, really.
Flying shouldn't feel like a gamble. It shouldn't be a leap of faith where you just, cross your fingers.
It should be routine, dependable.
It should be a journey you can trust, built on that solid foundation of transparency, expertise, and accountability.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, the message seems clear. This isn't just about technical regulations or bureaucratic structure.
No, it's about demanding better. It's about supporting those calls for real fundamental reform, not just tinkering around the edges.
It's about making sure that phrase, flying on a wing and a prayer, becomes just that, an old saying.
Something totally irrelevant to the reality of getting on a plane in India. Making sure safety isn't just hoped for, but engineered, enforced, and assured.